psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics. So let's see that how they deal with the mental lexicon. To understand what sorts of issue might arise in the study of mental lexicon, let's look at some of the aspects of Kayumat Jola. Consider its harmony, vowel harmony first. We have also referred to this language previously. The vowels of this language fall into two sets, tense and lax. Obviously, you people have studied phonology, so you will be familiar with these terms. You can think them lax, short vowels, and tense, long vowels, roughly, but you can have a precise understanding of this aspect of vowels. And all the vowels in a word must be either tense or lax. So in this language, in a word, the vowels have to be either tense or lax, right? So there is no mention of a diphthong. When a suffix is added to a word, so here is the question: when we add a suffix to a word which may have a lax vowel or a tense vowel, the vowel of the suffix may be either tense or lax. Obviously, like the word root, the vowel of the suffix can be either tense or lax, depending on the vowels of the stem. So it will depend on the type of the vowel of the stem. If a suffix contain a tense vowel, then the vowels of the stem must also become tense. So here is the suffix will make the vowel of the stem according to its type. If it is tense, it will become tense. If it is lax, it will become lax. Overall, tense vowels win as long as a complex word contains one tense vowel. All its vowels must also become tense. So, in this case, if the affix is having a tense vowel, so it will affect the stem and change its vowels to tense vowels. There are several ways in which those stems and suffixes that alternate between tense and lax could be represented in a personal mental lexicon. Since morphemes with only tense vowel never alternate, it is to assume that these morphemes have only one form in the mental lexicon. Obviously, if there is already a tense morpheme, so it doesn't have to change because a suffix with the tense vowel is attached to it. So it is believed that it has one word form in the lexicon. But other morphemes sometimes have lax vowels and sometimes have tense vowels, so they will affect the vowel of the stem to change either to lax or to tense. We could say that each of these morphemes has two alternative forms, or we can say they have allomorphs in the mental lexicon, and that the forms with lax vowel is selected just in case there is no tense vowel in the word. So in the absence of a tense vowel, the lax is selected. So it is like a situation of the allomorph, that with a certain sound we change a certain morpheme. We could say that there is a mental operation that makes lax vowel tense if there are tense vowels in the same words. So there is a mental operation. This automatically takes place. A psycholinguist or neurolinguist would ask how these different systems might be encoded in a person's brain and would want to devise experimental test and measures for determining whether a particular mechanism is actually at work. So they will always look for understanding of this mechanism with which this tense and lax are used in the mental lexicon of a person. We certainly know that speakers and signers do not hesitate when speaking and or signing, no matter how complex the morphology of their language. So when we are speaking or when we are writing, we write without any break, right? There is a flow of word that comes to us when we are speaking or when we are writing. Semantics alone thus provides some information about which form must be stored, not tell us how they are stored. So semantics tells that which word form needs to be stored, because that has to be used in a syntax. But how it is stored is not the realm of the semantics. According to most linguists, they are stored as complex structure, but no purely linguistic evidence to tell us whether that is so. So, as complex structures, it means that we take the word and we store it as it is found in a complex form, instead of thinking that we have a stem and we have affixes separately stored in our brain, and whenever we need to use a certain complex word, we combine these things and use language. So this all takes place within the brain. Similar question can be asked about all the inflectional forms of a single verb or noun, that how inflections are added, how we add different inflections of case, of number, of gender, etc. Or the question is, are they all stored or they are lying in our minds side by side and they are used on the spur of the moment at the requirement? And if so, are they stored together or separately? Do we have a separate portion for the stem and separate portion for the inflections, or it is in the complex word form that we store words? As it happens, a fairly broad consensus has emerged among psycholinguists in the last decade that morphological consideration needs to be introduced into any model of mental lexicon, that it needs to be introduced. In other words, regardless of whether any particular word are stored or not, or regardless of whether related words are stored together or separately, they do have morphological structure. So it was concluded that whether we store complex word or whether we store words in pieces, right? The thing is that they have a morphological structure. Whenever we use in a very morphologically correct form. Whether related words are stored together or separately, we just don't know. So this was concluded. Related word belonging to a certain similar meaning or similar type, they are stored. We don't know how they are stored. Even if everyone agrees that all words in the mental lexicon have morphological structure, many other issues remain undecided. One of the most central is that of the number of different mechanisms speakers use to access their mental lexicon, either in recognition or in production. So mechanism, what is the mechanism? That is very important. And when we have production of the words and when we have recognition of the word, which mechanism is used in these two processes? The most obvious answer is that there is only one mechanism, but in fact of the theories of accessing the mental lexicon that are out there in the literature, we can identify two broad types called the single root and dual root models. So this is a theory you can, at advanced level we can study this theory. So this a very accessible account of both model type is provided by Pinker. We talked about him. He has talked much about morphology. It is well known that the more frequent or familiar a word is, the faster a speaker can recognize it. So according to Hitchison, the familiar words are used more frequently, are recognized more frequently. An English speaker will recognize clean more quickly than glean, because clean is used more frequently than glean. Even though the two differ phonologically in only one distinct feature, because the first is about 30 times more frequent than the second. Most of the 500 most frequent words in English are simple, but even if a word is morphologically complex and perfectly regular, it may also be common. So maybe, for example, beautiful, it's a complex word, but it's a very frequently used word. So we cannot say that only simple words are frequent. Unfortunately, almost all the psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics research that has been done to date is based on English or other European languages whose inflectional and derivational morphology is fairly simple. So we can conclude that all the research that has been done in this regard relating to mental lexicon is done on English language or some other European languages, whereas to understand how does mental lexicon take place among the users of other languages is yet to be tested, seen and discussed.